Episode 1, The Arrival. The fog curled along the empty streets like a thick, living blanket, muffling even the faintest sounds. A lone figure moved cautiously under the dim glow of a streetlight, his shadow flickering in and out of existence. Detective Eli Winters, a seasoned investigator with more than a few cases under his belt, squinted against the mist as he approached the town of Black Hollow. It was his first time here, and the whispers of strange occurrences had been impossible to ignore. The town was notorious for its quiet demeanor and uncanny incidents, and Eli's arrival was anything but coincidental. There was talk of disappearances, locals, strangers, travelers, vanishing without a trace. It wasn't unusual for small towns to attract their share of unsettling rumors, but this was different. Each story ended the same way, with someone gone, no explanation, no clues. They just ceased to exist. Eli's orders had been clear, though odd: find the source and put a stop to it. With a reputation for unraveling strange cases, Eli was used to the feeling of stepping into the unknown, but this place carried a weight in the air, something oppressive that settled in his bones the moment he arrived. The locals, too, were strange. As he made his way down the cobbled streets toward his rented lodgings, he noticed doors closing hastily, eyes watching from shadowed windows, and whispers that died when he turned. It was as if Black Hollow was collectively holding its breath. Eli's temporary home was an old inn with a faded sign, the Black Lantern. It sat like a hunched creature, dark and imposing, at the edge of the town's main street. The innkeeper, a wiry old man with eyes that didn't quite meet Eli's, handed over a key with a slight tremor in his hand. "Room 17, upstairs," the man mumbled, his voice as faint as the creak of floorboards underfoot. "No disturbances tonight, detective. Best keep to yourself." He gave a glance out the window, where the fog seemed to press against the glass, alive and pulsing. As Eli ascended the staircase, the old man muttered something that caught his ear. "If you hear scratching, you should ignore it." Eli paused, about to question him, but the innkeeper was already gone. Odd advice, even for the cases he was used to, but Eli took note. He unlocked his room and stepped inside, his footsteps sinking into the faded red carpet that covered the floor. Room 17 was as ordinary as they came. A bed, a small desk, and a chair by the window. However, as he scanned the room, he noticed something unusual: a faded newspaper clipping pinned to the wall, yellowed with age. The headline read, "Missing, local girl last seen near Black Hollow Woods." Beneath the article was a photograph of a young girl, no older than 13, her face solemn and eyes dark. As he read the short piece, Eli felt a shiver run down his spine. According to the clipping, she'd vanished from her home one night, her bed found empty with the sheets rumpled as if she had been pulled from sleep. There was no sign of struggle, footprints, or evidence of anyone entering or leaving. The most chilling part of the article was its date, 15 years ago. The townspeople had tried to bury it, yet here it was, on his wall, as if someone wanted him to know. He glanced out the window, the street below now shrouded in an eerie silence. In the distance, he could just make out the twisted silhouettes of the Black Hollow Woods, where the girl had last been seen. That night, Eli slept fitfully, his mind haunted by images of the girl's face and the shadowed forest. Just as he drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, he heard it, a faint scratching sound, barely audible, coming from behind the wall near the bed. He lay still, breath caught in his throat, listening. The scratching continued an irregular pattern that seemed to echo in the quiet of the room. He told himself it was just a mouse, perhaps a branch scraping against the outer wall. But then it stopped, and the silence that followed was worse. Eli closed his eyes, willing himself to ignore it, just as the innkeeper had advised. Eventually, sleep claimed him, but his dreams were restless, filled with shadowed figures and hollow whispers. The next morning, Eli rose early, shaken but determined. He left the inn and headed into town, hoping to gather information about the girl from the townspeople. However, his inquiries were met with evasive glances and tight-lipped silence. Finally, he found a lead, a woman in her 60s named Marla, who agreed to talk only in whispers as she led him to a bench in the small town square. The girl's name was Lila. Marla began, her voice tremor in the morning air. She wasn't the first to disappear, but she was the last we dared to speak of. Eli leaned in, curiosity piqued. Why? Marla looked around as if afraid of being overheard. Because there's something in those woods, detective. It's been there for as long as I can remember, watching, waiting. Some say it's a curse. Others call it the Whispering Shadow. Eli took a deep breath, piecing together the fragments of information. Do you know where she was last seen? Maybe someone else was with her? The old woman shook her head, her eyes clouding over. No one was with her. She went into those woods alone, against her parents' warnings. They never saw her again, and neither has anyone else, at least, not alive. Eli felt a chill settle over him. The story had the trappings of local legend, but there was a gravity in Marla's words that made him uneasy. Stay away from the woods, detective, Marla said, clutching his hand with a surprising strength. Whatever's out there, it doesn't like strangers. And it never lets them leave. That night, back in his room, Eli replayed Marla's warning, torn between skepticism and an unshakable dread. As he lay in bed, he heard the scratching again, faint yet deliberate. This time, it was closer, almost as if it came from inside the room. Eli sat up, listening, his heart pounding. The scratching stopped abruptly, replaced by an odd silence, a waiting silence. Then, out of the darkness, came a whisper, faint and almost childlike. Help me. Eli's blood ran cold as he realized the voice was coming from beneath the floor. Gathering his nerve, he got out of bed and knelt, pressing his ear against the floorboards. Silence greeted him, thick and suffocating. But then, as he strained to listen, he heard it again, the same faint, desperate voice, repeating in a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Help me. He sat back, a chill settling deep in his bones. The case was no longer just about finding answers. It was about survival. Something was waiting for him in Black Hollow, something ancient and relentless, and as he drifted back to bed, he knew, with a certainty that filled him with dread, that it wouldn't stop until it had claimed him too. End of episode 1.